I'm going to take a second to talk to you about underdogs.
Everywhere, this is for you.
Fly was flying on the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a bird gang nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randall. Season here, really time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco, thanks for tuning in.
What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and this is Philly the podcast. So as you guys can tell, we have a very special guest today. We have the man, the myth, the legend, the X and O's guru himself. We got Fran Duffy in the building. Fran, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
Definitely. We're going to have some fun. Now, before we get into Eagles talk, I want to ask you what a lot of my subscribers have been asking me, and something I wanted to know. How is it that you've gotten to the place that you are now? You know, it's the X's and O's guy for the Eagles.
So it's a good question, a little bit of a long story. So I won't go through every single detail, but basically when I was in college, I was at Temple. It was my sophomore year, getting ready to be my junior year. And I answered an ad to be a student video assistant for the football team. They had just hired a new head coach in Al Golden in December of 2005. I had answered the ad in January of 2006 and basically took off from there. Within 12 months, I got hired full-time to be the head video coordinator as an undergrad. So I spent the next 6 seasons there with Temple and really just learned as much about the game as I could. And I loved football, grew up as a big fan of the Eagles and as a big fan of the game, played Madden, played fantasy, did all of that, all the same reasons we all love NFL football. And really that was my introduction to really understanding that I didn't know what I didn't know, like really kind of peeling back the curtain and starting to watch film for the first time. It was one of my first days there with Temple. One of our coaches brought in a couple of tapes. So it was the beta tapes of Denver Broncos offense from the previous year. And so just sat down. And I remember watching like 6-7 games of the Denver Broncos offense from the previous season and being like, I'm seeing this from a whole new vantage point, and I have no idea what I'm looking at. So really just kind of took off from there and just tried to soak up as much as I could. Looking back, I wish I had soaked up more and was even more involved, but spent 6 seasons or 5 seasons rather, full-time there with Temple. Made the jump up to the Eagles. 2011 was my first training camp, so summer of 2011. And I've been with the team ever since. And I've been really lucky, really blessed to have the management, the different bosses that I've had here at the Eagles have given me the freedom to kind of expand my role. And I was definitely all behind the scenes when I first started. Started producing Eagles Game Plan, helped formulate the idea for that show. I would say fall of 2011, going into 2012. And by October 2012, I was the head producer on there and working with our talent, with Ike Reese and Mike Quick. Those guys were awesome and so great to be able to work with immediately. Greg Cosell, same thing, and really just have tried to expand each and every year after that. And like I said, I've been really lucky. It's been a lot of hard work, but you can't do it without all the great people around you. And I've been really lucky from that respect.
Definitely. And we're lucky as well, because now the student has kind of become the teacher. You're teaching a lot of us, the X's and O's and behind the scenes of how these guys think. So I want to ask you a question. Now, this question is a very simple question, but we've heard, the importance that they've put in on these joint practices. I want to know from somebody that's been able to see these, live for as long as you have, what is a joint practice? What can fans, because I think we hear it and we just hear practice. Sure. What's different with the joint practice, as to just a regular, going out there with your own team?
So if you've been to a regular training camp practice, whether it was in Lehigh or whether it's been here in South Philadelphia, you kind of get the sense of what it is. The offense is going up against the defense. And it can be, once you get to like week 2, week 3, it can be a little monotonous. You're seeing the same matchups every single day. The players that are going up against the same guys, you get a sense of like, all right, this guy's body language. I kind of know what he's going to, what if you're a corner, I know what route he's going to probably run just by the way that he's coming off the ball. If you're an offensive lineman trying to block a pass rusher, like, all right, I've seen this guy. I've seen the moves that he's got. I've got an idea of what I'm about to go on. But when you have these joint practices, number one, you get good on good, right? So you've got another team's starters going up against your starters, and there's reps going on everywhere because you have twice the amount of players on the field. And so instead of the Eagles wide receivers going up against the Eagles corners in this one end zone, well, now you've got the Eagles receivers going up against the New England Patriots corners, and then you've got the New England receivers against the Eagles corners. Now there's a lot of drills going on, and so you're getting a ton of work happening all the time, which coaches love. You love being able to get as many reps, in a 90-minute or 2-hour window as possible. So there's a lot to evaluate, and honestly, it ups the urgency a little bit because you're not going. Brandon Graham isn't going up against Lane Johnson. He understands. Look, I'm trying to win this rep, but I got to take care of Lane too. I'm not going to try, and get our right tackle out for the season or anything like that. Not that you're necessarily doing that in a joint practice, but the energy level is a little bit different. It kind of ups the ante a little bit. And even, I was at joint practice for the Eagles and the Jets on Wednesday. They had some periods that seemed to go to the ground, and you just felt like a game out on the field. And so just that level of energy, it's tough to replicate that. When it's just your own squad, you can really kind of up it when you've got another team in town.
Definitely. And like you said, it was getting chippy sometimes out there, which you love to see. It's football season. So you love to see guys getting hit down to the ground. Now, Nick Sirianni has held these joint practices to a very high degree, right? Do you feel – I feel like the NFL is kind of moving towards that a little bit. Do you feel like you're getting – better work in these joint practices than you would in, say, a preseason game, or do you think it's just kind of becoming the new preseason game?
Well, you know what it is, Joe? It's that it's a little bit of a give and take, right? Because we know the traditional thinking with preseason, with taking care of your guys in the preseason, was we want to risk injury. We don't want to put our guys out there in a kind of a meaningless game. And so if we can take 12 tackles off of our running back's body going into the regular season, that's worthwhile. But not only is it that, because think about it. If you're an offensive coordinator, you want your starters to be able to see some live reps in as many different kind of situations as possible. Hey, we would really like to see a 2-minute drill. Like, that was gold to be able to see your guys be able to operate. Hey, the reason why we want to play them a full half is that we're going to see hopefully some red zone work. We're going to see some quality third downs. We're going to see some backed up. We're going to see second and short. We'll get some looks there. We'll see hopefully some blitzes from the opposing defense. The more you play, the more likely you are to see some of these very specific scenarios. But then when you get into practice, you can keep things controlled. You could do a whole period. Like, I mentioned that one yesterday. That was all down on the goal line. So the Eagles, yesterday, the first team defense got 6 or 7 reps of live goal line work that you may or may not get in a preseason game, right? If you're the first team. And so here with these joint practices, you have a controlled environment. You can get the exact looks that you want, the exact situations that you want in a competitive atmosphere without having all the live tackling go to the ground. You know what I mean? So you're getting a little bit of give and take there. And the other part, and Nick Sirianni has talked about this. It's funny. We had actually talked about it over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast in the beginning of camp. Is one of the benefits for having joint practices as well. The only 2 teams that are seeing that tape are the Eagles and the team you're going up against. Whereas in the preseason, the whole reason why you're vanilla in the preseason is that you don't want every team, because every team in the NFL gets that film. That's part of the rules of the NFL. Every game, every team gets that. But for practice, you get that. You've got to keep that in house. So it's only you and the opponent, and so you can start to run a little bit more of what you want to run during the regular season without the realization of this is going to get out. All 32 teams are going to see it. So there's definitely that trust between those 2 teams. Hey, we won't pass this film around about you. And vice versa. So you get that understanding. That's why you typically get it between 2 teams that have a relationship, or coaches and GMs that know each other, right? Because there's that trust factor there. So I think that's the other big part of this. And that's why whenever it gets talked about, they need to start televising these joint practices. To me, if they do that, teams are going to do less than the joint practice.
Yeah, that's the fan talking right there.
It's kind of a funny give and take there. But to me, these joint practices are very, very valuable. And when you're there every single day, I feel like a lot of the beat reporters that are there every day, they'll tell you the energy level is typically very different when you have a regular practice versus a joint practice. You'd like it to be the same, but you just can't help it be a little bit different when you have another team coming to your field, or if you're going to another team's complex as well.
Definitely. Now, you brought up your podcast, Eagle Eye in the Sky. Great work that you guys should say. Now, we did have Chris McPherson on here a couple of times, and the word that he used when I asked him this question was that it was very efficient. But I want to ask you, what would you categorize, or you know, if you could pick an adjective, I guess is the best way of saying it, to kind of describe what Nick Sirianni's practices are like? Because we see the time, we don't necessarily see the work put in. You know, how would you describe his practices thus far?
I would say that, you know, there is a very heavy emphasis on teaching, and, you know, going out there, being out there for individual drills and for one-on-one drills. You really get a sense of, you know, all of these coaches, when they're teaching their guys, it's not necessarily just a, hey, you know, player X, you didn't run this route the right way, or you didn't use your hands right on this pass rush move. Do it this way. It's more, hey, look, next time I want you to go, you run the route this way. I want to see your feet do this, or I want to see your hands do that. And the reason why is because when you do that, look at how that impacts the guy across from you. Look at how you're going to be able to create this separation, or you're going to be able to get the edge on this offensive tackle. There's always a why behind everything, and explaining like, hey, look, I'm not just telling you this just to do it. I'm telling you this to make you better. And this is exactly why. And so, you know, they're always trying to get in as many reps as possible. Teaching is a big, big part of this. And I think you're seeing that with the development of some of these young players. And it's not always going to be perfect with young players, right? So you're going to get some highs and some lows. There's going to be high variance with all those guys, but you're seeing players get better. And it's not just the big names, right? It's not just Jalen Hurts getting better from, you know, the practices 1 through 7 to practices 8 through 15. It's Jamon Osborne, you know, the undrafted free agent receiver who, you know, he was just released recently, but you see improvement there. You see guys that are on the bottom end of the roster getting better from practice 1 to practice 5 to practice 10. And I think that speaks to this coaching staff and the emphasis that they place on development.
Definitely. And you kind of segued this perfectly for me, because I want to talk about Kayvon Wallace. You put up a video not too recently on your Twitter, or not too long ago on your Twitter, just showing him, you know, making a great downhill play. How do you see him, you know, growing as a player? Obviously, he was running with the ones in the beginning of camp, you know, when Rodney McLeod's out and everything. Is there a real optimism that he could be a starter pretty soon for this team?
For sure. And I think, so look, when it comes down to like playing time for young players, a lot of it does come down to opportunity, right? And so when he comes into this Eagles defense, there are a couple starters ahead of him. Even now, you have Anthony Harris and Rodney McLeod hopefully back soon. So that's going to impact how quickly he's in the starting lineup. But, you know, a couple good examples just from last season, two guys that I think now a lot of Eagles fans would point to and say, oh, these are two of the best young players on this roster, would be Jordan Mailata and Josh Sweat, that same draft class in 2018. And if you look at both players, the improvements they made from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and then even this summer going into year 4, it's been marked improvements for each of those guys. And so they're just great examples of guys. Let's let these guys develop. Not everybody can come in and make that impact. And I look at Kayvon Wallace in a similar light, right? Last year, still kind of finding his way. It was his first time in the NFL. Year 2, you're starting to see him look a little bit more comfortable. He's playing with a little bit more confidence. He's out there jawing with Cam Newton, right? Well, I'm sure a guy that obviously he watched growing up every single year, coming up through high school, middle school, and so just playing with more confidence, and playing with more swag. Now, he's been banged up a little bit, and that has impacted his ability to consistently stay on the field in the latter part of camp. But this is a guy that has shown up. You mentioned he was getting those first team reps. I'm excited to see what he looks like here in year 2. It is a new defensive scheme. It'll be his 3rd scheme now in 3 years, going back to Clemson. So it is a little bit more similar, I think, in terms of a coverage standpoint to what he did at Clemson, where he was asked to do different things. He played a lot of underneath zone there with the Tigers. He played some quarters and things like that. It wasn't just straight man-to-man across the board all the time. And so I am very interested to see what he looks like here in year 2, year 3, but he'd be one of those guys. Like, we'll just let him develop, and let's see how he looks here going into 2022, 2023, and beyond.
Yeah, I love the trash talk, and I think that's why he's becoming one of Eagles fans' favorites. Now, I want to stay on the defense a little bit. A lot has been made about the Derek Barnett versus Josh Sweat battle, which is, rightfully so, right? They're making plays. But I want to talk a little bit about these guys on the inside / outside as well. But Milton Williams and Milton Williams and Javon Hargrave, they've been having good camps from what I'm reading. Can you just kind of tell me about what you're seeing in these guys?
Sure. Javon Hargrave has been one of the top 2 or 3 best players in camp, and he might be number 1. He has been one of the best players on the field from start to finish. He had that injury where he was out for like a practice or maybe 2. It was like an ankle injury, but he came in and picked his play up immediately. He has been dominant. And looking at the joint practices, what he did this week against the Jets, he was every single play. It felt like he was in the backfield. New England last week, he was dominant against the Patriots. And good offensive line last week against the Patriots, by the way, a really good group. And I thought that he gave them everything that they could handle. So I look at Javon Hargrave as having the ability to be one of the best players on this team, period, here in 2021. I'm really, really excited about him here this fall. And then you mentioned Milton Williams. This is a guy that I was really high on when I studied him at Louisiana Tech. Go back to January, February on the Journey of the Draft podcast, getting a chance to get eyes on him for the first time. He's a junior out of Louisiana Tech. I didn't know much about him, and so I turned on the tape, really kind of going in, not knowing much. Just blew me away. Just so explosive, so violent, so stout, and so powerful, very heavy-handed. He's still coming along in terms of figuring out his defined pass rush plan. You could see out there, even watching one-on-ones, he'll have a rep where, yep, there it is. That's why he was one of the most impressive players in this defensive line class. And then you have another where the timing wasn't great with his hands, or his steps weren't great, or the timing is just off. So you just see, all right, this is a guy that's going to come along. And I thought early in camp, I'm like, all right, like maybe this is the guy that will be on that Josh Sweat track, where maybe it's a little bit of a redshirt year 1, and then more of a role in year 2, and then a really big part of the defensive line in year 3. Then the more he plays, he's just gotten better day after day, week after week. And it's kind of what I was talking about earlier with some of these other guys that I mentioned, where you're seeing that improvement. And we've seen that from Milton Williams. He has turned it on the last couple of weeks. I thought that his first day against New England last week was the best practice he had. And then this past week against the Jets, I was talking with Ben Fennell over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. He was watching the defense on Tuesday. He said, this is the best Milton Williams has looked. He was outstanding. And so you just love seeing that improvement week after week after week. He's got versatility. Remember, he's playing a lot of defensive end. I don't know if that was necessarily the plan coming in, but showing off that versatility with Ryan Kerrigan, being injured for a large majority of the summer, he has kind of stepped in and had to be that second team left end, and he has done a really good job. He can line up inside. He can line up outside. I can't wait to watch this kid continue to develop. I was a big fan of him, compared him to Malik Jackson when I watched him at Louisiana Tech. And I love Malik Jackson, coming up, started in Denver, then goes to Jacksonville. I thought that he would have had a very, very similar skill set. And that's kind of what we're seeing in flashes. We'll see how he continues to develop.
Yeah, I love our defense right now. I think a lot of people are sleeping on what they can be. Now we've made it about 17 minutes without talking about QB1. Now I have to ask, I want to switch over a little bit to the offense. A lot has been made about, Jalen Hurts. I feel like we hear, depending on who's reporting, it's a different report almost every time on him. But you look at the tape. You see the tape. You saw the tape from last year. You're seeing what he's doing now. How do you feel about Jalen Hurts going into this season? Do you feel like he's making strides?
Definitely. To me, he was a guy that I brought up earlier because you saw that improvement from week 1 of camp to week 2 to week 3, and even that preseason performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers. What was he on the field for 10 plays? Or he had a handful of throws. He did some things in there, and of course, it's a very small sample size. So you don't want to go. That's the one thing about preseason is you get caught up sometimes with one play or two plays. And it's like, oh man, this guy's really, really great, or oh, this guy's going to be terrible. You don't want to go nuts with either on either side of that ledger, right? But I think it was a positive sign. Some of the things that he did, in that game against Pittsburgh. And then even since then, I thought that he was really, really sharp when I watched the offense on Tuesday against the Jets. I thought that he was one of probably the best quarterback on the field last week during joint practice, with the New England Patriots as well down here at the NovaCare complex. And so, seeing that improvement and just seeing the confidence that he's got, the way that his teammates respond to him, definitely a good sign. And again, you want to temper what that means, right? You'd rather see positive signs than negative signs. Definitely. But just because you're seeing positive signs doesn't mean that he's a top 5 quarterback week 1. So I'm excited to watch him continue to develop, continue to get better. Are there going to be highs and lows? Of course. That's what you're going to get with a young quarterback who only has a couple of 4 starts under his belt. So I'm excited to watch him, though, coming into year 2. It's going to be, obviously, it's a pivotal year for him.
Definitely. And if he continues to improve, we obviously see the new weapons that the Philadelphia Eagles have in Devontae Smith, in Quez Watkins, and, you're Jalen Reagor looking like a new man. So what have you seen from this wide receiving core? Should we tame our expectations there? Because we're getting pretty excited, friend. We haven't had good wide receivers for a while. So
yeah, it's a young group. Arguably the youngest in the NFL, and it's a fast group. They have a lot of speed. When you look at Devontae, you look at Jalen, you look at Quez Watkins. These are guys that are going to win a lot of races out on the football field. Obviously we saw that with Quez in that first preseason game. Jalen, we've seen what he can be as a game breaker. And Devontae Smith, I mean, there's not a lot to say. He is just so smooth. He's so slick as a route runner. He gets off the line of scrimmage well. He can create separation, and it's almost automatic. You watch him at Alabama, the ball very, very rarely hit the ground. And so even that's why the big thing, I think a lot of people made a big thing about his drops last week against New England in the preseason. If that was an issue for him in college, that'd be a little bit more worrisome. He's not getting better. He very rarely put the ball on the ground at Alabama. He didn't fight the ball at all. And so, you kind of chalk that up. Nick Sirianni used the word antsy. You say like he's excited about he's juiced up for that first game. It's similar to a quarterback going in and he maybe sails a couple balls early on in the game. It's like, it's his first action. Let him get his feet under him. I feel the same way about Devontae Smith. He's been really impressive whenever he's been on the field this summer during practice. Jalen Reagor has made probably, I would say, 2 or 3 of the best plays in camp from the receiving core have come from number 18. Just his ability to go up and finish. He's run some really, really slick routes. But again, it's like some of the other pass rushers I've talked about. Let those guys develop. It's not always going to look great with a guy like Jalen Reagor. You're betting on the upside, right? You're betting on what he can be. And I think when you see the flashes, now you want those flashes to be a little bit more consistent. But Jalen Reagor, I mean, he's got the ability to be one of the game breakers in this league. When you look at the tools that he's got at his disposal with his play strength, with his speed, his ability to go up and win, and not just on jump balls, but in some contested situations in traffic and things of that nature. So he is a really fun player that I was really high on when he was at TCU, and I'm really excited about what he can be in this offense, which is predicated on getting playmakers the football.
That just feels good. That just feels good when you say it. I got the chills. I got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll get you out of here. So the one question I want to ask is actually from our subscribers, and they want to know, seeing the camp so far, obviously 2 more weeks until we go to Atlanta, give or take a couple of days. Do you feel that they've gotten enough work in, or are these next 2 weeks very important for this team to kind of gel together and everything like that? Or do you think they've gotten the work in that they wanted to in this offseason?
I think they definitely have gotten the work that they want to. If they wanted to have more, then you believe that they'd be playing more in the preseason, right? But the coaches obviously feel comfortable with where they at. If they didn't, then they'd be treating it a little bit of a different way. So I think, and that's the tough part. I know fans, we only see the preseason games. That's all we have access to, right? But not only are they out there for training camp, but they're out there for walkthroughs. The coaches have them for their meetings every day. They're there from 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. until until the middle of the night. So they're spending a lot of time with these guys. So you get a sense of who's ready, who's not, who needs more reps, who doesn't, who's good, who do we want to put on ice. And so I think that they've got a good sense of who's ready and who needs a little bit more time. And I think that's kind of how they feel right now. They had 2 really good weeks of practice against the Jets and against the Patriots. As I mentioned, really spirited days of practice. The energy level was good. They got some good contact in. They got some good teamwork. The one-on-ones were really good. So plenty to evaluate, plenty to work on from a developmental standpoint. Yeah, I think that this team is excited to get the regular season started for sure.
Yeah, we got to keep Jalen Hurts in that mode. I like when he's in that mode. Right. So the last question I want to ask, man, is probably going to be a little bit difficult. I know they have been kind of trying to hold stuff back, but if you had to explain who you think this team is, going into the 2021 season, how would you explain this new Philadelphia Eagles team to the fans?
It's a good question, and obviously we still have to kind of figure that out. Right now, a lot of it offensively is going to come down to the play of the quarterback, and that's how it is with every offense in the NFL. In today's league, everything is centered around the quarterback and his strengths and how he's going to play, how he's going to execute the offense. And so if Jalen can play the way that we've seen over the last couple of weeks during these joint practices where, he's making good decisions with the football, he's creating in the backfield, he's getting the ball out to his playmakers in stride. I mean, if you think back to that Pittsburgh game, like he hit Dallas Goedert on that corner route, perfect timing, perfect placement. that's not a route that, 100 times, if you run that play 100 times, you're not getting that yards after catch on more than 50 of them, right? He put that in a perfect spot, perfect timing, giving Dallas the time to be able to turn up field and use his athleticism to create, right? And so if Jalen Reagor can do, or if Jalen Hurts rather can do those things as the quarterback of this offense, that can really kind of generate, hey, we're going to let these guys be playmakers, the Devontaes and the Jalen Reagors and the Miles Sanders and Goddards. Get those guys to football, let them be athletic, let them be the game breakers that we know that they can be. I think that's what this offense can be centered on. Now, that said, you've got one of the best offensive lines in football when healthy. And so, getting Miles Sanders going downhill, you get some of these other backs going downhill in a lot of different ways. I've talked so much over the last few years about how multiple this run game is and how they can beat you in so many different ways. I don't expect that to change. With Jeff Stoutland still here as the run game coordinator, we're going to see a lot of those same things, would be my guess, in terms of how they're going to run the football, how they're going to attack defenses. And so the run game is going to be a big part of what they do offensively. And look, defensively, I've talked about this in the past. I think a lot of people get hung up on 4-3-3-4, or is it a cover 2 scheme? Is it a cover 3 scheme? Everybody in the NFL runs basically everything, right? You are going to be extremely multiple with your fronts. You're going to be multiple with your coverages. Ultimately, what I'm looking for when you talk about a defensive coordinator and how they're going to play, it comes down to mindset and philosophy and what your core values are. And it's very, very clear that this defense is placing a lot of emphasis on creating turnovers, right? And they practice it every day. They preach it every day. Everything they do is centered around getting the ball back to the offense. And they're just going to play with a lot of intensity and toughness, and they're going to be smart defense, and they're going to come at you in a lot of different ways. They're going to be very, very multiple. And so that's what I would say about this defense in terms of what to expect. A lot of guys I'm really excited about to see here in 2021.
Yeah, I'm a defensive guy, so if we win every game 3-0, I'll be in heaven. I will absolutely love it. But Fran, I appreciate your time so much, man. We're gonna have links to all your podcasts, and obviously we have your Twitter handle right on the side of you. Everybody watching, be sure to go support what he does. And I just want to say, on behalf of all Eagles fans, thank you so much for the work that you do put in, because we all are learning when we watch. So we're looking forward to that Week 1 tape review.
That's right. I'm looking forward to it too, man. And Joe, I appreciate the kind words. Thanks so much. It's I love doing what I do. And one of my favorite people ask me all the time, what's your favorite part about your job? And I said, without question, it's being able to interact with the fans and teach the fans more about the game, because it's a game that everybody loves, and just peeling back the curtain a little bit to make everybody smarter, you can enjoy the game. That's what it was for me, was, playing Madden more, playing fantasy more. It's like, all right, as I'm younger, that helped me learn more about the game, and that made me love it more. And then when you watch more tape, you're like, oh, I really love this side of it. I love the analytical side of it. And so to me, making fans smarter, it really helps enhance their love for the game. And so that's my favorite part of what I do. So I appreciate you saying that.
That's awesome, man. But everybody that is watching, we appreciate you. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. But other than that, y'all know what it is, man. It is Fly Eagles Fly, and we are out of here. Peace.
B. Scott with the Philadelphia
John
Eagles.
Dornbos here at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Average the Philadelphia Eagles.
Follow my guy Joe Castro on his YouTube/podcast channel.
Let's give a shout out to the Philly podcast.
And shout out Philly and my guy Joe Castro. So keep on doing great things, guys. Fly Eagles Fly.
Fly Eagles Fly.
Go Birds.